Welcome to part 2 of the two-part series, Seeing the Bait. In this part, I want to talk about what bait actually is. A lot of folks, they know what a physical bait is. That is when you want to capture a fish or when you want to capture a mouse. They know you need to put some food in the trap for the animal to be attracted to it. When you're angling, that means fishing with an angle, you put some, I won't say cheese, but you put some food at the angle before you land the angle in the water. The fish will notice the food, bite in it, and is trapped. With a mouse trap, the mouse will see the cheese or the cake or whatever, or the rat food. They will go to eat it and they are smacked. Or if it's just rat poison, they will eat it and the poison will work it out. In both cases, you use a natural substance for an unnatural purpose. Well, I won't say unnatural because when you go fishing, it's natural for human beings to eat fish and to fish, but you get what I'm saying. It's better said, not unnatural but an unusual purpose. Advertisement contains many baits. I found this image in Google search. I'm not going into the color codes of this advertisement, but it's obvious that they use the female figure as a bait. It's a very easy one. You don't really have to look deep into the image to see that the female figure is the bait to associate sexual excitement with the car. Your brain processes that in such a manner. So every time you see that car with that logo, you're reminded unconsciously about that attractive female and you develop this longing for the car. That's how they condition you. Now, in this image, it's obvious what the bait is and what they want from you, that you develop an attachment to the car. There are times that the bait is not obvious. And in daily life, when the enemy seeks to trap you, he will use situations and other people as bait to draw you away from Christ. The enemy knows that for him to bait you, he needs to come with something that's attractive or something that's desirable. Look, the enemy is not coming with some guy that promotes pedophilia openly and openly talks about his experience with kids. He's not going to use such an individual to drag you away from Christ. Because once you encounter such an individual, you would be shocked and you would run away. He wouldn't do that. If the enemy wants to trap you, he would rather use someone that's quiet, reserved, that minds her or his own business, because that's what a lot of world people want, to be left alone. So the enemy will play into this unexamined expectation. The enemy may send such an individual your way, or better said, he will push such an individual around you, knowing that you'll be in interaction with this individual sooner or later. And while you are in interaction with this individual, other unclean spirits will also send other folks into your life. In this case, it can be that first the enemy sends a soft-spoken person into your life, and then the enemy also sends a very loud and intrusive person into your life. Because you encounter the soft-spoken person first, and then you encounter the intrusive individual, you tend to become horrified with the intrusive individual, and you will gravitate towards the soft-spoken individual. And sometimes it goes the other way around. You encounter a very intrusive individual, and shortly afterwards a very soft-spoken individual comes by. It all works to attach you to the soft-spoken individual. Why does this happen? Because once you're attached to the soft-spoken individual, you develop a blind spot towards that individual. And once you've developed this blind spot, the enemy can use this blind spot he can use his blind spots to draw you away from Christ and to endanger you. That's a pattern the enemy often uses. So beware with encountering a polarity in situations. Just a polarity can be what I explained before. A soft-spoken individual and a very intrusive individual. You encounter both types in a very short period of time. It's not coincidence. There's no such thing as coincidence. Everything that manifests and works out on the earth is either originated by the supernatural or by the paranormal. I've explained that before. If you encounter polarity in a situation in a short period of time, then likely it's the enemy seeking to bait you. Because the soft-spoken individual is intended to make you feel comfortable so that you lower your guard. And once you've lowered your guard, this soft-spoken individual will then be used to condition you against other people. This soft-spoken individual, because you have developed an attachment to him or to her, you tend to believe what they say. So when they seek sympathy and they distort facts to get sympathy, you probably won't recognize it. And you'll end up supporting evildoers, unaware. I'm giving an illustration. Let's say, and this is a case that really happened, but I'm not going to mention all the facts. I'm going to change a few facts for the example's sake. There was this guy, well, he worked as a correction officer in a prison, and things were going well. He earned some good money. He constructed his own house. Instead of renting a house somewhere, he constructed his own house on a plot of land. His father was also successful. They weren't rich businessmen, but they had wealth, small portion of wealth. One day this guy meets this woman, I believe she was 20 or 21, I'm not sure anymore, but he meets her and she was quite soft-spoken, very kind, polite, exactly the type of woman he was looking for. They became engaged very quickly. Things were working out. But then, one day, a police officer told them, "Sir, your fiancée reported to us that you abused her physically." The guy was shocked. The guy thought this can't be true because we're having a very great relationship here. So the guy went home and asked the fiancée what was going on, and the fiancée denied ever going to the police to report him. So the cops left the case alone. They thought it was a misunderstanding. Around a half year later, or a bit more than half year, the guy was arrested for domestic violence. And the guy was convicted for domestic violence. But the guy always made plain that he was innocent. Shortly after the guy ended up in jail, the father of that guy also was charged based on an accusation, or let's say, based on a report given by that fiancée that her future father-in-law also assaulted her. So now the future father-in-law, well, he didn't really become her father-in-law anyway, but the father of the guy who was in jail now had to face legal charges also. So when the guy was behind bars and he had his lawyer pleading for him, there was one female police officer, because most of the male police officers believed the woman, but there was one female police officer that checked the story again, and she noticed that something didn't add up. She realized that the statement of the alleged victim did not add up with what happened. So this female police officer then checked the background of this alleged victim, and she found out that years before, not that many years, but a while before, she accused another man, a much older man, of sexual improper behavior. And back then, the accusations were fierce and quite intense, and a lot of people believed her, but because she gave contradictory statements, people found out quickly that she was lying. However, the reputation of that older man was ruined, also the reputation of his family, and, well, the damage was done. She was considered mentally ill and the charges were dropped. So then the female police officer thought, hold on a minute. This woman is known to be a liar, to be mentally unstable. Why is it that nobody checked her background? So the case was reopened, and after a few interviews, the alleged victim admitted that she lied. She then was charged for disrupting the courts of justice in the country, and she was sentenced, I believe, to 3.5 years in jail. The guy that was jailed for allegedly abusing her was released because it never happened. But it took some years before its record was completely erased. And it took some years before he was financially active again and that he was recovered from all that happened. Now, in that story that I just gave on to you, I left out the place where it happened. Those that know the case know which case I'm talking about. In that case, who was the bait and who was the target? Because I've explained the story now and how it unfolded, you can see clearly that the target was this young man, this correction officer, who had some money, not a lot of money, but he had some money. He was the target. In this case, the predator used herself as a bait. The predator aligned herself with the expectations of her target. And because the target was not aware that how smooth things how smooth things unfolded was not natural, he fell for it. He lowered his guard. He became attached to her. He thought they had a future together. Only to later find out that she was only seeking comfort at his expense. And when she couldn't hold on to the act, because it was all an act, when the act was backfiring on her, she needed to get rid of him before she was exposed. So she trapped him in a web of lies that cost him everything. And then she moved on doing the same thing with other folks. Now, what I tell you before, when the enemy seeks to trap you, he will send people in your life. Often will be a contrast between two or more individuals. That is so she will gravitate to the one that's the bait. Okay? So, when you encounter a situation, whether it's someone that's very supportive of you, suddenly, or whether it's someone that suddenly they stop talking to you and later hear that they are murmuring about you behind your back. What's going on? It's a bait. And I need to speak more about this last example of people suddenly stop talking to you, but they're talking behind your back. What's going on now is that you want justice. You want that individual to give an account for their behavior, and that's the right thing. But I'm telling you, it's bait. Because your longing for justice is triggered to keep you trapped in a cycle of negativity. That other individual that stopped talking to you and started talking about you behind your back in a negative way, they are the ones seeking relief by draining sympathy from others. So all those other people must examine this individual, realize they're being used to feed his or her ego, so they should not enable this individual. That's their responsibility. But now, because your name, or you are the one used by this sympathy addict, you want to set things straight. Because you don't want lies to advance at your expense. You want to defend yourself. But this urge for self-defense is a trap. Because the moment you address this individual, now the people that fell for the lies will want evidence from you. But even if they receive evidence that you're innocent, they need to face that they've been scammed. But you will have folks that don't want to admit they've been scammed. So they will hold on to your guilt even though there's no evidence for your guilt. So your longing for justice and your longing to defend yourself got you in trouble. In this case, it would have been far better if you ignored it. Not in the sense that you didn't pay attention to it, but it would have been better if you saw through the situation and realized that this was bait. In this case, if you just would have shaken the dust off your feet and continue, at the same time you can enforce spiritual repercussions, but you continue with living, sooner or later the lie is going to catch up with the perpetrator, and all those that enable the perpetrator will also be trapped with the contention they developed. In this case, the situation will destroy itself, but you're not in it. The whole purpose of the enemy was to trap you in self-destruction. And the other individual, who obviously has issues, who stopped talking to you and began to use you to drain sympathy from others, that individual was the bait. Because you couldn't see what type of individual it was in the beginning, the bait was effective. Too many folks, they have their expectations they hold on to, and they filter other people based on their own expectations. They're relying on their own understanding, and it's their reliance on their own understanding that blinds them from seeing things as they are. Truth being told, when I notice how often people end up in toxic situations, and later I examine the history of how they got into those situations, I'm not going to blame them, because when you don't know something, you don't know it. You're not the Most High, you don't know everything, you can't know everything. But when I look at the history of how they ended up in a situation, I'm often shocked. I'm often asked myself, couldn't they see this coming? Sometimes it's very, very obvious to the outsider what's going on. But those on the inside don't notice it. It's not always the case. There are times the insiders sense something's up, but don't know exactly what it is. Okay, let me give an example of me directly. Years ago, I believe in 2015, I think it was, there were people making videos against me on YouTube. There was this woman that lost her mind, because this woman on YouTube was proclaiming that the Apostle Paul was not anointed by the Most High. She began to come with all kinds of weird ideas, and I made plain I'm not into it. The moment I did this, she began to make videos about me, how dangerous I was and all of that. Soon, other subscribers noticed her making videos about me, and that she didn't make any sense at all. And soon after that, she removed her videos, or her account was blocked. I don't know what happened. I reported her to YouTube. Then in early 2016, she tries to contact me again through another YouTube account, and she even mentioned she was the one earlier, from a year earlier. She even mentioned it in the comment section. I blocked her immediately. There was also this guy, I don't know who he was, that made a video against me in in late 2015, I believe. Later when I checked out, because I tended to address the guy, the video was gone. When it happened, I saw the bait. I saw what was going on. I saw that it was the enemy using the situation to draw me away from doing God's will. So I didn't give in to the situation. I just walked away. In this case, walking away implied I just didn't respond to the situation. And what happened? The situation dissolved itself. Now don't get me wrong. There are times you need to respond to a situation. And there are times you just need to leave the situation for what it is. I can't tell you when to do which. Therefore, you need to be alert as you need to abide in the Holy Spirit. Because the Holy Spirit will reveal you things about situations you'll encounter. I believe maybe it's 2 months ago now. Lately, this year, there was a guy also that made a video against me. And before this guy made this video, in this video he mentioned me and some other YouTubers. Before he made this video, I believe around a month earlier, I felt psychic attacks. There were psychic attacks on me. And another believer, a fellow believer, told me, Rashid, I sense that there's some contention developing against you. And shortly after that, subscribers told me about this guy making videos against me. I made plain to the subscribers, I'm not going into it. And what happened? The situation dissolved itself. It went away. If I would have got into that situation to defend myself, I would have not been making these videos now to teach you. It was a trap. I'm telling you right now, some of you, you're about to be trapped by the enemy if you don't pay attention. Any situation you encounter, bring it to prayer. I've said this before. Bring it to prayer. You don't have to pray out loud with your mouth, but in your mind, just keep praying about situations all the time. It can be that sometimes God will send someone your way. He or she may not even be a believer. They may even be people with many issues. But sometimes God will send someone your way, not so that you will hang out with them nor be yoked with them for the long term, but God will sometimes send an individual your way, sometimes even an unbeliever, to alert you. It can be that there's this guy you used to go to college with. He often got drunk on weekends and all of that, so you weren't into all of that, and you haven't seen him for years. Now suddenly you bump into him again, and you think, okay, this guy is not serving Christ, and he still has this issue with alcohol. Why does this happen? But then, when you bump into the guy, someone calls you. Let's say it's your fiance or maybe your mother or someone close to you calls you. And you talk with the individual on the phone. When you close the conversation, the guy you've bumped into tells you, dude, I know it's not my business, but I sense some irritation in this conversation. Let's say that you spoke to your mother. Let's say your name is Susie, and you spoke to your mother, Martha. And let's say this guy you've bumped into, there's nothing romantic going on between you, you just bumped into him after all those years. Let's say you have a conversation with your mother. And then the guy tells you, Susie, I feel like something's not right with your mother. The guy notes that the way you spoke to your mother was in a fearful manner. You were not aware of it, but the guy sensed it. So the guy told you that he sensed something was wrong with your mom. After that, you never heard anything from the guy again. But then you begin to pay attention to how your mother communicates with you and to you, and you realize indeed that the way she's treating you doesn't add up. And it's then that you wake up to her narcissism and to her reprobation. Now what happened now? God sent someone your way just to open your eyes. That individual was not intended to remain with you, but he was just there to alert you, because this other individual, even though he was or she was just an outsider, they noticed something quickly that you didn't. That's why this attitude that you only listen to people you're deeply involved with, or as I say in the world, people you know, people from your inner circle, it's a dangerous mentality. Because a group can be deceived, and group deception is far more effective than individual deception. So from time to time, the Holy Spirit will bring folks near you, not so that they can remain with you, but so that they can alert you. It can be that you have an attitude that you seek to control situations, and that the enemy sends someone near you that you consider annoying because they talk too loud or they talk too much according to you. And you're so annoyed with this individual, but then you realize, hold on a minute, why am I so annoyed? Oh, I'm annoyed because things don't go my way. And then you realize, why does things always have to go my way? Now you're alert that your attitude to control things is not from Christ, and God wants you to lose that attitude. Listen, when you have unexamined expectations, the enemy has a lot he can use to bait you. And he will. So unlearn every perspective that's not Christ-centered. Unlearn it for your own safety and the safety of those around you. Well, that's it for now. Keep agreeing with Christ and be at peace.